Hello, and welcome to Not Very Scary Stories. Allow me to give you a little background before we continue on with tonight's subject. I used to love listening to horror and paranormal stories on the internet via Corpse Husband on YouTube and That's Why We Drink podcast on Spotify. At one point here a year ago or so, I had the idea to start my own paranormal investigation series on my YouTube channel, Zenith Dark Sky, as the name I go by. Well, little did I know that takes time, money, and patience to do. So to no one's surprise, I haven't been able to record as many of those as I would like, but through that experience I created the secondary brand for myself, now known as Not Very Scary. The idea behind my videos was to go out of my way and investigate these hauntings with little to no tech, because that's the tech that a normal person would have with them if they were to try and discover whether the paranormal actually exists or not. So the videos were low budget because they had to be. But if the outcome of my investigations was that these places and things weren't haunted, then they wouldn't be very scary then, would they? Hence the name, Not Very Scary. Later on through my streaming career, I decided to create a podcast known as the Dark Sky Gaming Podcast, talking about gaming and all of those sorts of things. But I still held a passion for the paranormal and horror related. So finally, I asked my community, and they all agreed for the most part, that a paranormal/horror podcast would be fantastic. So here we are. I'm Zenith Dark Sky, and I'll be your host here on Not Very Scary Stories in relation to my brand Not Very Scary. I plan on doing 3 episodes per week through October, and a few episodes per month, every other month. I may decide to keep the podcast as just a seasonal podcast every October. We'll see how we do first. Having said all that, I will be doing just 1 episode of stories from the internet per week, 1 episode of personal/friend stories, or just really someone I know and their stories, and 1 episode of an actual event or haunting. Thank you guys for listening to my story tonight. It was the best story I could think of to start off with, and it's the only one I have prepared for the first episode. I plan for the episodes to be at least 30 minutes to an hour at the most, but we'll see where this one sits. Be sure to leave a sub, follow, or whatever you can on whatever platform you're on, as a lot of those platforms have different things, such as free subscriptions, or following, or whatever. Also, be sure to leave a review as well, so people will know to listen in as well. Eventually, I'm going to take viewer stories too. You can send those stories into my email, darkskyGameNews@gmail.com. But please, be as detailed as possible, and let me know how you want me to credit you, whether it's your name, a social media name, or anonymously. Enjoy, and have a good night. Without further ado, the first episode tonight will be based on scary events that have happened to me. Enjoy. This happened to me when I was in high school, living in a small shack on my parents' property. Although that won't be the only setting here, I'll explain as we go. As a little bit of a backstory from me, I never believed in God, or really the paranormal much as I got older. A lot of my friends didn't really either. I had this one friend, we'll call him Jim. He came from a religious family, but he wasn't much into it himself. Since we were teenagers, all my friends and I would stay the weekend at our other friends' houses, or our houses, or whatever. One weekend, Jim was spending the weekend with me. And it wasn't very eventful. Played video games, did random shit outside, ate food, watched movies, normal teenage dude activities. Well, my little shack was known for having several of us catch glimpses of movement outside the windows and seemingly glimpses of light outside the windows. Now this isn't really scary at first when you understand I grew up in Arkansas and in a little town known for having its fair share of meth heads in Arkansas as well. You never really knew what you were going to see or hear or interact with. Also, my father did many things outside at any time. He was a paranoid man a bit, so any noises or things moving outside, and he would investigate if he caught wind of it. But back to Jim and I. Jim had stayed the weekend, and I'll reiterate, it was rather uneventful. I could drive at the time, so at the end of the weekend, Sunday night, I was going to drive him back home. Well, my Ford Escape was rather low on gas, so I wasn't so into the idea of driving all the way, and Jim's father was 100% willing to meet us at this church down the back road I lived on. Now understand, this church was very old and very small, and they had a new building next to it. A big metal, pale-colored building with more of an updated look internally. The other building looked very much like a small, old, and traditional-looking Baptist church. On the church's property, there was a little graveyard out behind the older building, and to the right of the newer building. Picture it kind of behind, but in the middle of both church buildings. No parking lot, it was more just gravel and grass you parked on. That's where Jim and I decided we'd park this night to meet Jim's father to pick him up. Well, we pull in, and I don't need to tell you that sitting between these buildings in the dark of night was not an enjoyable experience, but we were in the car talking shit with each other, so that lightened the mood a little bit. But as you could have guessed, we started both vocalizing the fact that we were creeped out, which in all honesty made it creepier. We started acknowledging that neither one of us wanted to look outside the windows, so we didn't. We just looked at each other, the radio, or what was in front of us in the car. Jim made an effort to call his dad and see where he was a few times, but to no avail. Then he noticed something. He got my attention and said, "Dude, I think there's some figure standing out behind one of those graves." "Don't tell me that, man. I already hate it here, but where? I don't see anything," I replied to Jim. "Right there." And as he pointed in the distance to a grave near the edge of the woods behind the graveyard, there it was. A dark figure that I could make out a few details on, but not much. Just lingering behind a tall headstone. Just as I made it out, I finally said, "Dude, fuck that. I'm driving you all the way home. If I run out of gas or can't make it home, I'll just stay with you tonight." I pull out and drive about 30 seconds when finally Jim's father comes down the road. We stop in the middle of the road, and I allow my friend to get out and get in his father's van. They turn around and drive off, and I turn back and speed past the church, hoping not to see anything. I don't even look. Fast forward to when I get home. I eat, shower, watch TV, then go to bed. Now for the next several weeks, I remember every night around the same time, waking up and just feeling like something is standing next to my twin bed. Some nights, I'm turned around toward the wall, so I can't see anything, nor do I even want to take a look. I would just coax myself back to sleep. But sometimes, it would be when I was on my back, or even worse, facing the room. I can distinctly remember seeing a tall, dark figure next to my bed several times out of the corner of my eye, in the middle of the night, just lingering. During the weeks that this is happening to me, a few things happen. I still invite my friends over to stay the weekend, or I go to their houses. I sleep better at theirs, for sure. Not long after the initial event with Jim, he asks me at school if anything weird has been happening. So, I tell him, "Not really, man. I feel like someone's watching me when I sleep, and sometimes I think I see shit, but that just happens in my house anyways, so why?" Jim tells me that he hasn't been getting much sleep, and that he told his father about what happened that night. Sometimes he even swears there's someone outside his window that he sleeps next to with the blinds usually pulled down. After several nights of this and some extra things happened to him that I can't quite remember the details of at this point, his father got someone to perform an exorcism. His father believed we had attracted or even gotten a demon attached to one or both of us, if that's even possible. In awe, I just say, "Wow, holy shit, dude, that's fucking crazy. Is that all better now?" "Yeah, man, I've been sleeping a lot better." Fast forward to another night where I wake up facing the room instead of the wall. Most of the nights this happens, I usually just keep my eyes closed out of the fear that something will happen or I will see something I don't want to in my own little shack. Not this night. I don't know why, but instead, I open my eyes. More of a squint, really, but it doesn't matter. I see it using the TV's light coming from behind it, being the only light in the room illuminating the darkness. Standing beside my bed is a tall, dark, almost slimy-looking creature. There's a definite shine, and it looks like one large mass made of several snakes coiling and slithering around each other. I know that sounds far-fetched, but that's what I remember best being able to compare it to. Think to yourself a creature made out of a bunch of wire, but the wire is slippery? It wasn't, to my knowledge, made of a bunch of snakes, but that's the only thing I know to compare it to. Now, as I'm stressed, water in my eyes, trying to look up out of the corner of my eyes while keeping my eyes squinted, I see a long head that comes to more of a point in the back, peering down at me from what I can tell. Then, I fell back to sleep. Now, I don't recall if I quite fell back to sleep or passed out from the fear, but all I know is that I was asleep once more and I was happy to be asleep. I woke up remembering it again vividly, but my room was now fine again, illuminated from the early morning sun beginning to rise through my clouds outside my window. My TV had gone off due to power saving, I hope. I continued to live my day-to-day life as if nothing was wrong. I don't quite understand how I kept that up, but most of the time I was just, calm when I'd wake up every night, as if I wasn't threatened, just alert to something watching me. I almost felt as if it was watching me to protect me, not hurt me. Now, after that night, friends and I continued to see things once in a while outside of my shack window, storm door, or the window in the actual door when it was closed along with the storm door, as it had a window in it as well. Nothing really of note happened, though, until finally one night. It was a Friday night, and I had another friend over, and we'll call him Steven. We had fallen asleep, him on my sectional couch in the shack about a foot away from my twin bed, and of course me in my bed. And with the storm door closed, but not the other door, so you could see outside through the storm door, if you follow. Basically, the storm door had two big windows, and there was a bigger metal door on the inside that had one window in it. The metal door was open, the storm door was closed and locked. I woke again to no one's surprise, but the lights were on. I assumed it was my friend and he had woken up and snacked and maybe played a game or something, and so I started to turn over against the wall, not opening my eyes, until I did open my eyes. I noticed my friend balled up on the corner of the couch against the wall next to me. He was crying from what I could tell. So, as any good friend, I guess, would do, I sat up and asked him, "Steven, what's wrong, bro?" He looked at me reluctantly, face as pale as the couch he was on. He thought for a minute and finally told me, "Dude, I saw something outside your door." "Describe it to me," I replied, knowing instantly what it probably was, but also with the thought in my head that it could have easily been a meth head or something too. I mean, we had meth heads that lived all over, around our road specifically. We had several nights where meth heads would open the toolbox right outside my door. My father's toolbox from his truck, that wasn't on his truck. There were all kinds of events that happened there. But either way, we'll leave those for other stories. "No, man," he quickly responded. "I know what you saw. Now describe it to me, dude. Please. I want to know for sure," I said assuringly. He then described it, down to a T, what I had seen that night when I had woken up with the courage to actually look at it. A demon? A ghost? I don't really know, and frankly I don't want to, because after that night, I never saw it again. After that night, I've never really slept as well either, without some sort of noise, being music or the low hum of a TV or a fan. To this day, I still haven't found any answers to To this day, I still haven't discussed that night with my friend or even called him out by name for it when I do tell the story to some other friends. Why would I? I don't want him to remember this thing as much as I don't want to remember myself. Jim was fine after, to my knowledge, after their exorcism, that is. Who knows, maybe it was a peaceful spirit, or maybe it was a demon, or maybe something much worse.